This is too long. And we want something we can benefit from, something we can learn from that isn't so long. So Imam al-Ghazali wrote a book. Basically, you could kind of title it if you want, Guidance 101, Bidayatul Hidayah, the beginning of guidance. And what's very interesting about this book is the structure of the book. So you guys covered it a little bit last time, but I want to just reflect on the title, Bidayatul Hidayah, the beginning of guidance. This is a significant title. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, in the surah that we all recite every single day, He says, Ihdina as-sirata al-mustaqim. Guide us to the straight path. Guide us to the straight path. Sirata alladhina an'amta alayhim, the path of those whom you have blessed, غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين, and not the path of those who have incurred your wrath or those who are lost. The whole dua of Surah Al-Fatiha is asking Allah for guidance. Asking Allah for guidance. مَنْ يَهْدِ اللَّهُ فَلَا مُضِلَّ لَهُ. Whoever Allah guides, nobody can misguide that person. وَمَنْ يُضْلِلْ فَلَا هَادِيَ لَهُ. Whoever Allah misguides, there's nobody that can guide that person. So Hidayah is a huge blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this book is a step-by-step guide on how to receive the guidance of Allah. How to receive the guidance of Allah, how to be among the muhtadeen, those who are guided by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So today we're going to cover Imam al-Ghazali's introduction. Last month you guys had an introduction to the book in general. This session will have an introduction that Imam al-Ghazali himself introduced, how he himself introduces the book. So we'll be going through the Arabic and the English, inshallah. You should have the slides up shortly. But for those of you who attended last time, you heard the recommendation of making sure that you have a PDF available to you. The Beginning of Guidance, published by White Thread Press. This is a book that's close to my heart. Why? Imam al-Ghazali, when you look at his works, you notice that he has a very strong passion for giving critique to those people who consider themselves students of knowledge or scholars. He lived in a time where it was trendy. It was trendy to learn Islam. It was the new thing. Everybody was doing it. Everybody was learning ilm. طَلَبُ الْعِلْمِ فَرِيضَةٌ عَلَى كُلِّ مُسْلِمٍ. Seeking knowledge is an obligation on every Muslim. So this was something that he noticed. But what he also noticed was something damaging. That many people were learning Islam for the wrong reasons. They were learning Islam for the wrong reasons. Right? And he's going to address this in the khutbah tul kitab, in the introduction to his book today. That the damage that people who learn the religion for wrong reasons do, the damage that they cause is more than the benefit that they bring. Because although they have the words, they talk the talk, if they're not walking the walk, if students and scholars become hypocrites, then how can they be leaders? If the scholar and the student of knowledge is the one giving the khutbah, however, they are the same person who does not follow their advice. If they're saying be good to your parents, but they're terrible to their parents. If they're saying be good to your children, but they're yelling at their children every day. They're abusing their family every day. If they're saying give charity, yet they can't remember the last time they gave charity. Then the damage this person causes to the community is not just that they are sinful, but people will emulate this person, and they will then be a harm to society as well. So this one individual became the reason that many people became sinful. So Imam al-Ghazali, he begins and he addresses every book that he writes, many of his writings, critiquing scholars, critiquing students of knowledge, and anybody who considers themselves a talibul ilm, a student of knowledge, or a scholar, or anybody just wanting to benefit from Islamic teachings, should pay attention to what Imam al-Ghazali rahimahullah has to say in his books. I love reading his books personally because it feels like a punch in the gut. It feels like he punches you. Sometimes you need one good tappar, man. You just need one good slap. You see what I'm saying? Because people who lead salah, people who give khutbahs, they receive too many masha'Allah. MashaAllah, great khutbah. MashaAllah, salah. MashaAllah this, MashaAllah that. Right? That's why the Prophet of Allah ﷺ said, be careful how much you praise somebody. And what Imam al-Ghazali does is he takes you down a notch. He humbles you. And all of us could use some humble pie. All of us could use a hit to our ego. That's what, so anybody looking to humble themselves would benefit a lot from reading Imam al-Ghazali's works. From reading even the English translation, which White Thread Press has done a great job, mashallah. So we're going to begin reading the Arabic and just translating it, reflecting on it. We're going to address 4 things today. And the first thing Imam al-Ghazali will address after praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is he will talk about intentionality, niyyah. He will then talk about the centrality of amal, the importance of actions. I want to give you the structure in your mind because reading books by themselves are not beneficial. How many of us have read a book, but we don't remember the content of that book after reading it? It's important to have a structure, an outline. One of my teachers, subhanallah, he says every book you read, you should write an outline for. Create a mind map for it. So I'm going to try helping us create a mind map of this book. In the khutbah at the beginning, he starts with niyyah, intentionality. And then he transitions to talking about the centrality, the importance of actions. He then talks about, he categorizes students of knowledge into 3 types. Very important. Very, very important categorization. He categorizes students of knowledge into 3 types. And then lastly, he gives us an insight into the name of the book, the purpose of the book, and the methodology of the book. So first we'll begin with niyyah. He follows within the footsteps of the muhaddithun, in the sense that he always begins with niyyah. You notice a lot of the scholars of hadith, they start their work with إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. That hadith where Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu ta'ala anhu narrates from the Prophet ﷺ, and he says that the Prophet of Allah ﷺ said all actions are only based on their intentions. He begins with this, and you notice this is a consistent theme in other of his writings as well. So he begins and he says, Alhamdulillahi haqqa hamdihi wassalatu wassalamu ala Muhammadin rasulihi wa abdihi wa ala alihi wa ashabihi min ba'di. He says, all praise and thanks is due to Allah as He deserves, and peace and salutations be on Muhammad, the messenger of Allah ﷺ, and the servant of Allah. Wa ala alihi wa ashabihi min ba'di, and all of his family and his companions after him. He says, amma ba'd. I'm going to be reading the Arabic briefly and then translating, so we kind of get a taste of the classical way of study, inshallah. And the introduction is short, so I won't get too long. He says, فَعَلَمْ أَيُّهَا الْحَرِيصُ عَلَى اقْتِبَاسِ الْعِلْمِ المظهر من نفسه صدق الرغبة فيه وفرط التعطش إليه أنك إن كنت تقصد بطلب العلم المنافسة والمباهاة والتقدم على الأقران واستمالة وجوه الناس إليك وجمع حطام الدنيا فأنت ساع في هدم دينك وإهلاك نفسك وبيع آخرتك بدنياك. He says, no, if you're following along the translation, you'll see it, by the way. If you have the PDF on you, or the slides will be up shortly. He says, you who are desirous of acquiring sacred knowledge, expressing in yourself a sincere longing and passionate thirst for it, know that if your aim in seeking knowledge is to compete, to show off, to outdo your peers, to garner attention, it means to elicit, to solicit, to get people to look at you. Right? Everyone today is obsessed with this influencer culture. Everybody needs to be an influencer now. The most random Joe Schmo has a podcast. The most random Muslim nowadays, subhanAllah, will have their own podcast. You know, my thoughts on marriage is, and the brother has never been married. Right? You know, my thoughts on being a good wife is, and that person has never been married. My thoughts on parenting is, the person's 17 years old. Right? So we see this online all the time. If you look at the percentage, if you look at statistics, recent statistics show that if you ask young people what they want to do in life, over 60% said, I want to be an influencer. You saw an influencer for what purpose? For what end? I want followers, I want likes, I want shares, I want, as they say now, clout. I want this social power. This is not what is good. It's not good. He says, know that if that is your intention, وَجَمَعَ حُطَامِ الدُّنْيَا, and that through this Islam, through studying knowledge, that you'll somehow be able to earn this dunya, فَأَنْتَ سَاعٍ فِي هَدَمِ دِينِكَ, then know that your efforts are actually destroying the foundation of your faith. It's like you're taking a pickaxe, going to your foundation of your house, and just destroying it. Completely flipping the script, completely destroying your Islam. Right? Islamic knowledge is not always good for everybody. For some people, it increases them in Iman, and for some people, it builds their Iman and it builds their actions. But for some people who aren't committed to actually acting on their knowledge, learning Islam becomes self-destructive. Because the more they learn, the more they're accountable for. So he says, وَإِهْلَاكِ نَفْسِكَ, you're destroying yourself. وَبَيْعِ آخِرَتِكَ بِدُنْيَاكَ, and you're selling your akhirah for the dunya. You're selling your akhirah for the dunya. You're purchasing the dunya with the akhirah. That's not good. Right? So he starts with the intention. Intention is important. Anybody who studies, anybody who claims to want to study, should remember and know why they are studying. Why they're sitting in a halaqah. Why am I sitting here? Why am I praying in the masjid? That question is always at the forefront of the believer's mind. Always. It is unhealthy. It's not good if a person is asked, why are you studying? And they say, I don't really know. I just like it here. Maybe they feel that they're getting the barakah of the gathering. That's not a problem. But the problem becomes when they don't know why they're studying what they're studying. When a person says, I have a gap year, or I finished college, I don't really know what I'm doing, I'm just going to study Islam. That can be good, but it can also be very destructive. Because now the person is learning without the commitment to actually change. The answer should be very simple. Why am I studying? In one way or another, the answer must come back to pleasing Allah. One way or another. Whether it's serving the community, whether it's teaching, whether it's being in the presence of scholars, whether it is acting upon that knowledge, the answer should always go back to Allah. Always. Intentionality. And then he emphasizes, he says, فَصَفْقَتُكَ خَاسِرَةٌ وَتِجَارَتُكَ بَائِرَةٌ وَمُعَلِّمُكَ مُعِينٌ لَكَ عَلَى عِصْيَانِكَ وَشَرِيكٌ لَكَ فِي خُسْرَانِكَ. He says, then this deal you made of seeking Islamic knowledge, it's a bad deal. And your trade was unsuccessful. And he says, listen to this. Your teacher is helping you disobey Allah. The Imam al-Ghazali, he's holding no punches back. He says, look, the student should be careful of their intention, and the teacher should be careful about who they teach. Numbers are not our concern. SubhanAllah, I want to share an anecdote here. There is this new, almost liberalized version of what we view Islamic success to be. How many people came to the halaqah? How many donations came in? How many people purchased tickets to attend the event? This is not how we view success. Success for an event, for a halaqah, is if even one person benefits. It's the ajr, the reward that comes from it. And he's saying that this idea of a teacher saying, anybody who wants to learn, come learn, is actually not a good thing. The teacher should be selective on who they teach, even if they could get more numbers by not being selective. Do you understand? If you go to any university, they're selective on who they bring into the university. Especially if it's a high quality university, if it's a well-known university. It's a good university. Similarly, in Islam, when it comes to teaching the deen, we are concerned about the intentionality and the sincerity and the goodness within the student as well. We have a history of teachers saying, I don't want to teach you. هذا فراق بيني وبينك. That's what actually the Khadr said to Musa alayhi salam, even though he was not saying so in a way that Musa alayhi salam is bad in any way, wal-'iyadhu billah. He was saying that, look, we've had our time together. The teacher has the ultimate say. In Islam, we don't have this idea of, I paid for the class, I deserve a spot. No. The teacher chooses. The teacher chooses this, right? Something that happened recently, subhanAllah. I one time gave a khutbah, okay? I'm going to share a little anecdote here. And for some reason, someone told me afterwards, man, subhanAllah, I know the khutbah was good. I said, how do you know? You weren't there. You weren't there. How do you know it was a good khutbah? He said, a lot of donations came in today. I said, wala hawla wala quwwata illa billah. Like, is that our standard for success now? To say something that gives the people the good feels and therefore the donations come in? Right? Someone once told me, I want you to keep giving khutab about Gaza, which is a very important issue. And they said because it uplifts people and people feel good walking out afterwards. I said, well, it's true, it makes people feel good, but the purpose of the khutbah is not to feel good. The purpose is to bring people to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to bring people closer to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Do you think people would be happy if the khatib gave a khutbah about divorce rate? If the khatib gave a khutbah about abusing children? If the khatib gave a khutbah about not paying zakat and how it's a problem? If the khatib gave a khutbah about riba? I can guarantee you someone will hear that khutbah and they're going to get offended. Someone might get offended like, oh wow, I feel personally attacked here. Someone might feel that way. Right? So we don't view success in numbers or in donations or anything like this. We view success. He says, وَمُعَلِّمُكَ مُعِينًا عَلَىٰ عِصْيَانِكَ. We view success in our deen based on the purity of the message and the purity of the one receiving that message. That's how we view it. Right? That's how we view it. He says, وَهُوَ كَبَائِعِ سَيْفٍ مِنْ قَاطِعِ طَرِيقٍ. It's like you're selling a sword to a highway robber. It's like giving a gun to a criminal. Why would you do that? وَمَنْ أَعَانَ عَلَى مَعْصِيَةٍ وَلَوْ بِشَطْرِ كَلِمَةٍ كَانَ شَرِيكًا فِيهَا. Whoever helps another person commit a sin, then they are actually sharing in that sin. Right? Then he says, وإن كانت نيتك وقصدك فيما بينك وبين الله تعالى من تعلم العلم الهداية دون مجرد الرواية. He says, but let's say your intention and your goal and your objective is in learning knowledge is to be guided. If your only concern is I want to be on better terms with Allah, if that is your intention, al-hidayah duna mujarrad al-riwaya, and you don't want to just be someone who regurgitates what they heard, who studies how their teachers speak, who studies how scholars speak, and they give a talk. If you want to have hidayah, فأبشر, then know that, then good glad tidings. فإن الملائكة تبسط لك أجنحتها إذا مشيت وحيتان البحر تستغفر لك إذا سعيت. He says, if you are a person who wants to be guided, and that's why you're seeking Islamic knowledge, that's why you're sitting in gatherings, that's why you're going to the masjid, that's why you are attending halaqat, then good news. The angels lower their wings for you. And the fish in the sea make istighfar for you. They seek Allah's forgiveness for you. And this is a hadith that we have regarding طلاب العلم. Then he says, look, ولكن ينبغي لك أن تعلم قبل كل شيء أن الهداية التي هي ثمرة العلم لها بداية ونهاية وظاهر وباطن. He says, look, before you begin this journey of spirituality, you must know that guidance, which is the fruit of knowledge, has a beginning and an end point. It has an external and internal reality. ولا وصول إلى نهايتها إلا بعد إحكام بدايتها. You can't get to the end objective, the end goal, the end maqam, the end spiritual station of hidayah until you have the beginning done, until you have fortified your foundation. You can't build a house without a foundation. You don't buy a house with a cracked foundation. You don't do this. It's not good. It's not smart. So he says you have to fortify your foundation. You must fortify that. وَلَا عُثُورَ عَلَى بَاطِنِهَا إِلَّا بَعْدَ الْوُقُوفِ عَلَى ظَاهِرِهَا. You cannot get to the meat of hidayah. You can't get to the deepest part of it until you start to address the external forms of hidayah. What is he talking about here? He's going to go into depth on this issue. But imagine a bucket of water. In order for your hand to reach the bottom of that bucket of water, you must first pass through the top. You can't, there's no shortcut to the bottom. You have to put your hand all the way through the top part of the water to the bottom. In order to get the pearls at the bottom of the ocean, you can't teleport there. You must first be willing to go through the difficulty of diving deep into the sea. So you must address the surface level first, then go deeper. And a lot of times people are asking for this super dhikr, super dua that will solve all their problems, right? What dua should I make for this? The answer is رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً وَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ. And their response might be, that's too simple. I learned that when I was a kid. Well, that's what makes it beautiful. That is one of the best ad'iyah, the best du'as you can make. Right? There's no super dhikr, special dua that will solve all the problems. There's no shortcut in spirituality. We have to take it step by step. Now he's going to say, وَهَا أَنَا مُشِيرٌ عَلَيْكَ بِبِدَايَةِ الْهِدَايَةِ. He says, I'm going to tell you the beginning of guidance. لِتُجَرِّبَ فِيهَا نَفْسَكَ. So you can test yourself. وَتَمْتَحِنَ بِهَا قَلْبَكَ. So you can test your own self here. Let's test ourselves, he says. He's now going to address the importance of action. Before we get into this, action, amal, is central to ilm. I can't be a person who learns without action. This gathering of ours, walhamdulillah ala dhalik, is not a gathering of just studying with no intention to improve. Ilm and amal share root letters. Ayn, lam, mim, ayn, mim, lam. They share root letters, and there's a reason for that. Ilm that benefits and translates to action. That's the purpose of this. So he's going to say this right now. He says, فَإِنْ صَادَفْتَ قَلْبَكَ إِلَيْهَا مَائِلًا. If your heart is accepting of this, وَنَفْسَكَ بِهَا مُطَاوِعَةً, and your nafs is complying, وَلَهَا قَابِلَةً, it's accepting, فَدُونَكَ, go ahead, وَالتَّطَلُّعَ إِلَى النِّهَايَاتِ. If you are willing and able to agree with the necessary things you have to do to put in the spiritual work, then go ahead. You will make it to the end. وَالتَّغَلْغُلْ إِلَى بِحَارِ عُلُومِ وَالْمُكَاشَفَاتِ. And you can then immerse yourself in the oceans of knowledge and the secrets. But وَإِنْ صَادَفْتَ قَلْبَكَ عِنْدَ مُؤَاخَذَتِكَ إِيَّاهُ بِهَا مُسَوِّفًا. But if, when you start learning, you find that in taking stock of it, as he says, your heart puts off starting it. Musawwifan, sawfa. Sawfa in Arabic means future, right? Musawwifan, from bab taf'il. If you are a person that when you hear the advices, you in your heart are saying, I'll do it later. وَبِالْعَمَلِ بِمُقْتَضَاهَا مُمَاطِلًا, and you're constantly procrastinating, acting on this advice. فَاعْلَمْ أَنَّ نَفْسَكَ الْمَائِلَ إِلَى طَلَبِ الْعِلْمِ هِيَ النَّفْسُ الْأَمَّارَ بِالسُّوءِ. He says something powerful. He says, if when you receive this knowledge, you're excited to act on it, good, keep going. But if your nafs, when you hear this, you're thinking, I'm going to eventually act on it, then know that your desire to learn knowledge is the nafs that commands to evil. Al-ammara bis-su'. There are 3 types of nafs in the Quran. One of them is al-nafs mutma'inna, the nafs that is content with Allah. Another is al-nafs al-ammara bis-su', the nafs that is evil, constantly calling you to evil, always inviting you to evil. And the third is al-nafs al-lawama, the nafs in between. It's a nafs that does evil, but it feels very bad about it. Most of us are probably in this. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us nafs mutma'inna, a content heart. So he says, if you are a person that's learning knowledge but doesn't want to act on it right now, know that you have the worst type of nafs. You're the nafs that is calling to evil. وَقَدْ انْتَهَضَتْ مُطِيعَةً لِلشَّيْطَانِ اللَّعِينِ. And your nafs is already fully in love with shaitan and obeying shaitan. لِيُدَلِّيَكَ بِحَبَلِ غُرُورِهِ. And essentially, shaitan is deluding you. Then he says, the shaitan is slowly but surely, gradually dragging you into his destructive plot. And all he wants to do, وَقَصْدُهُ أَن يُرَوِّجَ عَلَيْكَ الشَّرِّ فِي مَعْرِضِ الْخَيْرِ. It's a really beautiful phrase. He says shaitan is trying to market evil to you with the appearance of good. Tarweej, it's trying to sell something, trying to market something to you. So he's saying that shaitan is trying to sell it to you. Like a salesman, the salesman that comes to your door that you don't open the door for, right? Like that one. He's trying to sell it to you. You should not be deluded. You should not fall for it. But he's saying, this is what happens. حتى يلحقك بالأخسرين أعمال الذين ضل سعيهم في الحياة الدنيا وهم يحسبون أنهم يحسنون صنعا. He quotes the Quran and he says, Shaitan will take this person to the point where Allah says about them, the ones who are the worst in actions. Those whose efforts are wasted and misguided in this world, but they think they're doing great. This is the danger of learning knowledge without the intention to act on it. That they will be deluded by shaitan that I'm doing something good, but if I don't have an intention to act on it, if I'm attending this for the fun and games, if I'm attending this without the intention to improve, then what's the problem? I could then be somebody that is self-deluded, who thinks I'm doing great, but I'm not. And then he says, subhanallah, وَعِنْدَ ذَلِكَ at this point, يَتْلُو عَلَيْكَ الشَّيْطَانِ. Shaitan will recite to you فضل العلم, the virtues of knowledge, ودرجة العلماء, the station the ulama have, وما ورد فيه من الأخبار والآثار, and all the ahadith, all the narrations that praise the scholars and people of knowledge. And وَيُلْهِيكَ عَنْ قَوْلِهِ صلى الله عليه وسلم, and he will also make you forget when the Prophet of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم said, مَنْ ازْدَادَ عِلْمًا وَلَمْ يَزْدَدْ هُدًى لَمْ يَزْدَدْ مِنَ اللَّهِ إِلَّا بُعْدًا. Whoever increases in knowledge but not in guidance, then they only increase in distance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's a narration in Shu'ab al-Iman, إِنَّ أَشَدَّ النَّاسِ عَذَابًا يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ عَالِمٌ لَمْ يَنْفَعُهُ اللَّهُ بِعِلْمِهِ. The worst people in terms of punishment on the Day of Judgment are those who learn knowledge, a scholar whose knowledge did not benefit them. Right? We know these narrations. The Prophet ﷺ said, this is in Musnad Ahmad, مَرَرْتُ لَيْلَةً أُسْرِيَ بِي إِلَى السَّمَاءِ بِأَقْوَامٍ تُقَرَّضُ شِفَاهُمْ بِمَقَارِيضَ مِنْ نَارٍ. On the night where I was ascended to the heavens to see everything, the Isra wal Mi'raj, I saw people whose lips were being cut off by scissors of fire. And فَقُلْتُ مَنْ أَنْتُمْ, who are you? فقالوا كنا نأمر بالمعروف بالخير ولا نأتيه وننهى عن الشر ونأتيه. Subhanallah. They will respond, we used to tell people to do good, but we never did it ourselves. We used to tell people don't do bad, but we would do that. Right? So basically the hypocrisy at its finest. So he says, فَإِيَّاكَ يَا مِسْكِينَ أَن تُذْعِنَ لِتَزْوِيرِهِ وَتَتَدَلَّى بِحَبْلِ غُرُورِهِ. He says, oh, ya miskeen, a poor kid, poor boy, hey, ya miskeen, don't fall for his false promises. And don't think into the delusion that he's going to feed you. فَوَيْلٌ لِلْجَاهِلِ حَيْثُ لَمْ يَتَعَلَّمْ مَرَّةً وَاحِدَةً وَوَيْلٌ لِلْعَالِمِ حَيْثُ لَمْ يَعْمَلْ بِعِلْمِهِ أَلْفَ مَرَّةً. He says, woe to the one who's ignorant when they chose not to learn even one thing. But woe, cursed to be the scholar who did not act on their knowledge 1,000 times. The one who's ignorant, fine, that's a mistake. But the one who knows and doesn't act, he says woe to them 1,000 times. Okay? He's going to transition into 3 types of students. And to save on time, I'm going to just mention them instead of reading every line. But we're going to highlight the relevant portions. He says there are 3 types of students of knowledge, right? So we went over niyyah, and now we also went over the importance of action. We over here are concerned with action. We are here today, bidayatul hidayah, the beginning of guidance, because we want to be guided. We want to do what's right, right? We have a culture today of listening to the most popular speaker. Someone's coming in town, let me drive 1.5 hours to attend their lecture. Did I pray Fajr today? No, but I'm going to drive 1.5 hours for their lecture. Right? Now, if someone wants to be inspired, that's all fine and dandy. That's a good thing. But we must look inwards and ask ourselves, am I concerned with guidance and being a good person? Or am I obsessed with hearing about Islam and not acting on it? This book is all about action, transformation, change. And a person who properly reads this book with the intention to change, inshallah, will find that change. Inshallah. So the first type of student is a person who studies Islam with the intention to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فَهَذَا مِنَ الْفَائِزِينَ. This is one of the successful people. He is one of the winners, as the translation says. The intention must always go back to Allah somehow. Everybody has their own skill set. I know some people who learn Islam and they do da'wah in a specific field, da'wah in prison, for example. It's valuable. Someone else does da'wah in a particular language that they are very fluent in. That's amazing. Some people are younger and they learn Islam and they do youth work. Some people are older and will do more lectures for senior people. Everybody must use their skills to somehow please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The danger is when a person's asked, why are you studying? And they just say, I don't know, my friend did it. Someone else did it, so I want to do it now. Right? The second type of person is a person in between. The second type of student, رَجُلٌ طَلَبَهُ لِيَسْتَعِينَ بِهِ عَلَى حَيَاتِهِ الْعَاجِلَةِ. They seek Islamic knowledge, hoping it will give them some benefit in this world. They're hoping it will give them honor, social status, wealth, and وَهُوَ عَالِمٌ بِذَلِكَ. And this person knows their intention is wrong. مستشعر في قلبه ركاكة حالي. No English can get the beauty of this Arabic. He says, this person who has this mixed intention knows deep in their heart how feeble the state of their heart is. وخسة مقصده, how vile, how lowly their intention is. فهذا من المخاطرين. These people are risk takers. Why does he مخاطر, risk taker? Because he says, فَإِنْ عَاجَلَهُ أَجَلُهُ قَبْلَ التَّوْبَةِ خِيفَ عَلَيْهِ سُوءُ الْخَاتِمَةِ. If death comes to this person before they do tawbah, which how many people does that happen to that we know of? People who think I will have a long lifespan, they pass away in their 20s. Someone who says I'm going to live a long time and they pass away in their teens. He says if they don't seek tawbah, then only Allah knows what will happen to this person. They had a mixed intention. It's up to Allah to forgive them now. وَإِن وُفِّقَ لِلتَّوْبَةِ. However, if Allah gives them the ability to do tawbah before their life ends, and they make up for the mistakes, they take steps to prevent the mistakes they've done and to make up for those mistakes, then they are now within group one of the winners. Because although they had mixed intentions, they purified it, sought forgiveness, and kept going. They kept going. The third group is the dangerous group. He says the third student of knowledge is the one who shaitan has completely taken control over. فَاتَّخَذَ عِلْمَهُ ذَرِيعَةً إِلَى التَّكَاثُرِ بِالْمَالِ وَالتَّفَاخُرِ بِالْجَاهِ وَالتَّعَزُّزِ بِكَثْرَةِ الْأَتْبَاعِ. This person used their knowledge to get money, to get social status. And they were constantly checking in on how many followers they had. And they would take might and pride in this. They use their knowledge to get everything they want from the world. رَجَاءَ أَنْ يَقْضِيَ بِنَ الدُّنْيَا وَطَرَةً. They want to get every desire in their dunya to be fulfilled. وَهُوَ مَعَ ذَلِكَ يُضْمِرُ فِي نَفْسِهِ أَنَّهُ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ بِمَكَانٍ. And in his heart, he's hiding this sense. He thinks that he has a good relationship with Allah. لِاتِّسَامِهِ بِسِمَةِ الْعُلَمَاءِ. Because this person thinks like, hey, I dress, I walk, I talk like scholars, so therefore I have their fadila, I have their virtue as well. مَعَ تَكَالُبِهِ عَلَى الدُّنْيَا ظَاهِرًا وَبَاطِنًا. Kalb means dog. Takalub is like this ravenous feeling, this raving and raging for the dunya. Even though this person is salivating over the dunya externally and internally in their heart, they think somehow they're going to be okay. فَهَذَا مِنَ الْهَالِكِينَ. These people are destroyed. وَمِنَ الْحَمْقَى الْمَغْرُورِينَ. And from the deluded fools. This is dangerous. A person who weaponizes Islamic knowledge to make a dunya. Very dangerous. We've seen this in our communities. We've seen this happen before. The damage they do is more than the good they do. Is that correct? The damage is much more. Without a doubt. And he's going to address this. He says, look, I'm going to fast forward a bit. He says that there's a narration in Musnad Ahmad that the Prophet of Allah ﷺ says, I fear other people over you than I fear Dajjal. And the people said, what do you mean, oh Ya Rasulullah? I thought Dajjal is the worst. He said, وَمَنْ هُمْ Ya Rasulullah? Who are these people that we should fear? The Prophet of Allah ﷺ said, عُلَمَاءُ السُّوء, evil scholars. Why? Because Dajjal wants to misguide you. But the scholar who speaks good and does not act, they think they're guiding people, but actions speak louder than words. So now they build a following of people who want to be righteous, who are following his actions, not his words. And now, as a result, the whole community becomes misguided. Then he says, the corruption that this deluded person has brought on is worse than the rectification they have done in people's hearts. They've caused more damage and they've done good. Right? This is something that we need to understand. A lot of times people learn a bit of knowledge and they want to make a difference. And that's a good thing to do, but sometimes people go too far. And they think that, okay, I know something, I can share it now. And they don't wait for the right moment, the right time, the right experience so that they can say those things with confidence and say it with barakah. A person with no barakah in the da'wah doesn't mean anything. Barakah in da'wah is not how flowery the language is. Barakah is when that person makes sajda in the middle of the night, asking Allah, oh Allah, use me for the deen. Use me for the service of your deen. And then you see even the person who isn't able to speak clearly, the words touch the heart. Musa alayhi salam was not able to speak clearly and asked Allah, oh Allah, untie the knot on my tongue. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed his message to shake hearts and bring people to Islam. This is where true barakah lies. Then he says, فَكُنْ أَيُّهَا الطَّالِبْ مِنَ الْفَرِيقِ الْأَوَّلِ. Be the first group of students who are pure in their sincerity to Allah. Not the second who had a mixed intention, who we don't know where they're going to end up. Or the third group they're clearly deluded, and you can even say they're evil people, right? He then transitions to the last thing for today. He says, what is the beginning of guidance? How can I test myself? We're going to end with this. No, he says, know that guidance, ظاهر التقوى. The beginning of guidance is the external manifestation of taqwa. وَنِهَايَتَهَا بَاطِنُ التَّقْوَى. And the end of guidance is when taqwa goes into your heart as well, goes into the depths of your soul. فَلَا عَاقِبَةَ إِلَّا لِلتَّقْوَى. There is no good ending except for those who have taqwa. وَلَا هُدَى إِلَّا لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. And there is no guidance except for those who are committed to having taqwa. What is taqwa? Notice, he says the beginning of guidance is the external appearance of taqwa, and the guidance, the end of it, the culmination of guidance, is when that taqwa goes into that person's heart and soul. Quick note here. Allah in the Quran says, وَلِبَاسُ التَّقْوَى ذَلِكَ خَيْرٌ. Speaking about Adam and Hawa, Adam alayhi salam and Hawa. But Imam al-Razi delves into this, and he mentions a few statements of the Sahaba. Ibn Abbas says, وَلِبَاسُ التَّقْوَى. The clothing of taqwa that is best. What does the clothing of taqwa mean? Ibn Abbas says the clothing of taqwa, al-amal al-salih, is good actions. What does that mean? In order to be guided, I must be willing to take on the external appearance of taqwa first. I must fake it till I make it. I must do the actions of righteousness, and eventually it will seep into my heart. A scholar was once asked, how do you enjoy your prayer? You seem to enjoy your prayer so much. And the scholars responded, for 40 years, I did not enjoy salah. For 40 years, I forced myself to pray even though I don't enjoy it. And Allah eventually gifted me the enjoyment of salah. This is what we believe. That we start with the external appearance of salah, of taqwa, and then Allah gifts us the internal taqwa as well. What is taqwa? عبارة عن امتثال أوامر الله تعالى. It means that you are imitating or emulating or following the commands of Allah, وَاجْتِنَابِ نَوَاهِهِ, and staying away from what Allah prohibited. فَهُمَا قِسْمَانِ. Here we go. The last part of this section, of the introduction, Imam al-Ghazali tells us why he sectioned the book the way he did. He says that the beginning of guidance is taqwa, externally, and the end of it is when that taqwa comes inside of you, when it's inside of you, when it's in your heart, in your soul, and you have now internalized it, right? So he says taqwa is the key here. We have to develop taqwa. If I want to be guided, I have to develop taqwa. How do I develop taqwa? He defines it. Number one, obeying Allah. Number two, staying away from disobeying Allah. How is the book structured? The first section is all of the ways you can obey Allah. The second section of the book is how to not disobey Allah. And the third section is how to interact with Khaliq and Makhluk. How to interact with the Creator and the created in a good way. This sectioning is important for us to remember. I want us to create a mind map. Imam al-Ghazali told us about intentions. And then he tells us about the importance of action. We're here to act, not just hear. Then he told us the three types of students of knowledge. We should try our best to categorize ourselves here and ask ourselves, where am I? He then tells us the wisdom in the ordering of the book. So next session, inshallah, as Mufti Kamani told you, you'll be starting the session or the section of the second section, which is how to not disobey Allah. You're just reordering it a little bit, perhaps for more benefit. Wallahu a'lam. But it's important to remember this structure. You don't just come thinking, I'm just going to hear what the person has to say. Think of the reason for why Imam al-Ghazali sectioned the book this way. When you're studying how do I not disobey Allah, it's because that is a necessary half piece of what taqwa is. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to be moved and for us to implement what was said and heard. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us taqwa. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to aid us in the journey of this guidance that we are seeking. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide us. Ihdina as-sirat al-mustaqim. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide us on the straight path and make us among the group al-awwal, the first group, al-faizin. Now, inshallah, I believe you guys have food in a potluck. Obviously, these days are not only for the lecture, but also for socialization, community, and a chance to have some suhbah, have some time together. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow that to happen right now and to allow that intention to be rewarded. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad. Barakallahu feekum. Jazakum Allah khairan. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I started at 8:35.
Today we are joined in welcoming Imam Shaheer from Unity Islamic Center over in Mansfield, Texas, not too far from and he's no stranger to this masjid as he has been giving multiple khatiras this past Ramadan. Inshallah, if the opportunity arises and Mufti puts this upon you, you may see him again, inshallah, this upcoming Ramadan, starting in February and March, inshallah. So as he mentioned, we do have food prepared in the cafeteria, inshallah, to encourage everyone in the community to go ahead and attend. Please keep us in your du'as if there's anything that you have done that is wrong, and from our shortcomings. If there's anything else great from this gathering tonight, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's guidance. With that being said, please go ahead and follow our social medias and our WhatsApp chats so that we're able to keep you guys updated with what happens in the future, inshallah. And with that, Jazakallah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi.
All right. I started at 8, so I wasn't sure. So yeah, as long as I would have continued. 30 minutes. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi. Oh, wow. I saw you.
وحشناك يا اخي we miss you. الحمد لله ما شاء الله ربي ينصرك ربي يوفقك.